Welcome to the CEO Story, brought to you by KC Chauhan, founder of Together CFO, where every week we're interviewing the top CEOs in various industries, sharing their journey and extracting the top things that made them successful. We've got a fantastic episode. We've got Charles Huang here, founder of Lynchpin Technologies and Lynchpin Capital. So, Charles, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So firstly, you've got two Lynchpin companies. Can you tell us what the difference is between the two, please?
Sure. So Lynchpin Technologies was a company that I started in August of 2015 when I left Blackstone, and it's a company that basically is an ad tech company applied to healthcare. So it basically looks at your social traffic, your social exhaust, and also your web browsing behavior with consumer consent, of course, and then utilize that to make inferences about your health intent and health behavior, feeds that to the payer, the health insurer, so that they can proactively engage you in near real time instead of waiting for a claim to hit, which is the normal method of identification for a health condition or a health episode. So that has gone through an acquisition, and I can't reveal all of the details right now, but I will not be the CEO of the company going forward, but I will still be the chairman of the board, and obviously an active, hands-on advisor to the CEO and the CTO and the C-suite team. So with that, that has been in the works for the past 6 to 9 months, and it's still actually getting papered up formally in the next few weeks. Obviously, with the coronavirus and COVID, things have slowed down from a business perspective, from legal and accounting and all that fun stuff. But Lynchpin Capital is the investment fund that I started, and we formally announced it in April 1st, so just a short while ago. But it's an early stage platform to do three things. One is ventures, so to invest in seed, Series A, and some select Series B companies in the following sectors: health, education, retail, infrastructure, and technology. So it's my belief, it's my thesis that the convergence of these 5 sectors will result in kind of the next generation of companies that will redefine the landscape as we know it, that will replace, the Ciscos of the world, or the Facebooks of the world, or United Healthcares of the world, and or be a very, very keen competitor. So it is health focused. Obviously, that health has to be the foundational pillar there. And then, in order for us to invest, the company has to hit at least 2, if not 3, of those sectors. So that's the ventures side. There's 2 other parts of the 3-legged stool that is Lynchpin Capital. The middle leg is what we call Lynchpin Catalyst, which basically is our portfolio operations group. So we exist to help our portfolio companies that we invest in with anything that you can think of, whether it's marketing, if it's clinical strategy, if it's financial, if it's raising money, if it's finding customers, if it's hiring talent, if it's coding. So we have a partnership with a sister company, for example, on the coding side, which is ISBX, which is related to ScaleHealth. And so if for example we have a company that is looking to ship some software and they have a due date of May 1st, which is this Friday, but they don't have enough resources from the engineering side, then our partner ISBX can lend resources from a coding perspective so that the timelines can be met.
Fantastic.
So Lynchpin Catalyst exists to support our portfolio companies, but Lynchpin Catalyst also exists to serve as boutique advisory consulting work for Fortune 50 companies. I have been on retainer, for the last 9 months or so with a very large retailer based in Arkansas to help them on their health technology services strategy. There are other large Fortune 50 payers, retailers, technology firms that are in healthcare that want to get into healthcare, that know my background, know the team around me, that have engaged us to help them on a variety of kind of boutique consulting work. So that's what Lynchpin Callus will do as well. And then the final leg of the three-legged stool that is Lynchpin Capital is what we're calling Lynchpin Studios or Lynchpin Labs. So you can imagine, based upon our view of the marketplace with the venture side, the work that we do on behalf of our portfolio companies, and as a trusted advisor, boutique consultant to the C-suite at Fortune 50 companies, we'll have a view of the marketplace and see where there are gaps. And based upon that information, we will create and start companies. So we will launch, incubate companies ourselves. We will put together an MVP, and then we'll have an anchor customer, right? That will be a Fortune 50 or a Fortune 100 company, within 3 or 6 months time when we have actual product shipped and or ready in the market. And after that, we will still stay on board, on those companies, but we'll hire in, a professional team, so to speak, to run it on a day in, day out basis. And then we will go back to the drawing board or go back to the whiteboard and think about the next thing that we want to incubate. So that's what Lynchpin Capital is. And that's where I'm spending, about 80% of my time, my waking time. I spend about 20% of my time with my friends and colleagues at ScaleHealth. Johnny, who's the VP of Business Development, Taylor McPartland, who, as I mentioned, is the CEO. A few others, Kelly Chu, who's kind of the CTO, and then Tina, who is the COO, and a few other folks around the table, where we are basically trying to provide a physical co-working space for startups and large companies to create a community focused on health innovation. So we have 2 locations in Southern California today, kind of the home office, which is in West LA, where I have to head later with Johnny's help since I lost my key card. But we opened up a new location in Orange County, California, and we're actively looking at other locations outside of California, kind of in emerging middle market areas where we can have a footprint and expand and take the knowledge, kind of the reputation, our kind of community building, which Johnny has a great hand and role in, as well as other folks around the table, like India, who is our director of community, and David Turkel, who heads up marketing. And we're looking at a few active cities like Salt Lake City, perhaps Austin, Chicago, where we're going to probably in the next 3, 6, 9 months, certainly by the end of the year, announce where we're going to open up a location outside of California.
Let's dig into a little bit of your history there. Thank you for that detailed introduction, kind of understanding of what you're currently doing. It sounds like you're very busy, but we will come back to that. So if we kind of roll back the years a little bit and we get into your history, you had fantastic education at John Hopkins, at Harvard, and then again Harvard Business School, and then you kind of went into the working world. What really drove you to? It's very clear to see you have a passion in healthcare and a very heavy finance background. What kind of brought that about?
It's gonna sound cliche, but my father. So my father is a PhD biochemist. The classic kind of immigrant story here to the United States. So, my parents are Taiwanese. My older brother was born in Taiwan, and they came here for a better opportunity. I was made in Taiwan, but I was born in the United States. My father did his grad school work here. He did his master's at Kent State, and then did his PhD at NC State in biochemistry and molecular biology. And I can remember very vividly, in Raleigh, North Carolina, I must have been 3, 2 or 3 at that time, going with my dad into the lab, and looking at, the pipettes and looking at, chemicals and reagents and things like that. As the years went on, my dad has been in industry, in biotech, life sciences, and also in academia. And I remember for one of my early elementary school career days, having him come in and talk and, kind of impart his knowledge and wisdom, which I obviously always am attentive to and listen to. And, he basically said, hey, if you're smart and you apply yourself, you can do, many things in life. You can provide for your family, you can make a good living and a good income, buy a house, buy a car, but try and find something that you do that actually benefits society at large. Because if you can do that and make good money, then, you won't think of it as a job, right? It'll just be part of who you are. And so that really resonated with me from early on in elementary school. And so, my dad is an immigrant here. English obviously is not his first language. But in elementary school, middle school, and high school, he would give me his presentations, at work, some of his grant proposals, to the CDC or to the NIH, or his patent things that he would patent, filing for patents, and have me just kind of read and review it, from a grammar perspective. And so I was infused into kind of life sciences, and that combined with, that early lesson of, hey, if you can do something that provides a good living for yourself and for your family, and also provides kind of a benefit to society at large, then there's, you can find joy in that, and you won't view it as a job, but more of a calling. And that's kind of how I don't know if I willed myself to do it, or if, God works in mysterious ways, but, I believe I was put on this planet to kind of do this, to promote and catalyze health innovation, as cheesy as that sounds. And that can be from the investing side, that can be from the mentoring side, that can be from the operating side, that can be from the advisory side. To me, that's why I don't view it as work. I view it as just another day to make a difference, to try and make a difference. And yeah, I mean, I love.
That's fantastic. It's really good to have kind of that connection to your father throughout your career as well, and then he definitely shaped your mind at a young age. But getting into more of kind of the venture capitalist stuff and Blackstone and, the other big companies, the VC firms that you worked for, how did you get into that area of work from biochemistry? Seems to be a very different avenue.
Yeah. So again, my dad was a PhD biochemist. But I studied public health at Johns Hopkins, and then, did not pursue the doctor route. But, early on, the more that I learned, I basically thought that, hey, the way that the market is changing in the United States, the way that the market is changing across the world in terms of healthcare delivery and doctors, I would rather, as glib as this sounds, I would rather be on the business side, where I can hopefully influence, practices or companies or decisions, policies that can impact, hundreds of thousands, if not tens of millions of individuals, versus a physician who is, kind of limited based upon their panel size of, 3,500 to 5,000 patients, right, within a panel. And that's not discounting that work, right? That's obviously God's work and what have you. But so, I've been a healthcare guy through and through. When I first started my professional life after college, even while doing research at Hopkins Hospital while I was in college around telemedicine, teleradiology, I did consulting first for about 3 years at Towers Perrin, which is now Willis Towers Watson in Boston. I thought consulting was interesting, but then I thought that, hey, wouldn't it be great to actually have some operating experience? So I left, a nice consulting job, at least what I thought was a nice consulting job at the time, took a 30% pay cut and worked for a health insurer in Boston, Harvard Pilgrim Health Care. And that's where I really, I think, cut my teeth. So Harvard Pilgrim Health Care, for those that know healthcare in the United States and particularly know the insurance world, was the number one health plan in America for 10 years running, according to NCQA and U.S. News and World Report, based upon member satisfaction and clinical quality and outcomes. And so I was there for that time and contributed to that. and really loved the environment at Harvard Pilgrim. It's a very flat matrix organization, about 1,200 corporate employees. But the thing about healthcare, and I think in particular, the thing about, most companies that I've been a part of and that I've witnessed or learned from is that, there's always kind of the 80-20 rule. You hear about the 80-20 rule in healthcare, right? 20% of the people represent 80% of the cost. Now, I think the same applies in actual productivity within a company. I think there's 20% of the people that basically do 80% of the actual work, kind of the critical work. You always need someone to do, bookkeeping, and, I'm not discounting that. You always need someone to, to deliver the mail or ship packages or what have you. But in terms of kind of the critical functions of a business, I think it's the 80-20 rule. And at Harvard Pilgrim, I was fortunate to have some really great mentors who were across the business. So I worked in strategic financial planning. I rolled up to the CFO, kind of corporate finance and strategy role. But I had weekly meetings with our chief medical officer. I had weekly meetings with our head of IT and technology. I had monthly meetings with our head of sales. And I had monthly meetings with our head of provider contracting and network contracting. So, I was still young but just a sponge, and Harvard Pilgrim and the leadership on down created a culture whereby if you had competency and you had capacity and you had a willingness to work, they would throw you as much as work as you wanted and give you numerous opportunities to kind of learn and advance your career. So that's where I really, I think, cut my teeth from an operating perspective. So
I like that. I think there's a lot to be said, and kind of one of the takeaways. I'm trying to take bits of nuggets out of each one of these experiences, and I really like the way that you expressed that the 80-20 rule of productivity, let's call it, where the vast majority of the key functions are done by 20% of the people. Do you think that's the same across multiple industries, or just in a certain few?
So I'm going to say that applies to healthcare for sure, particularly on the payer side. I think on the delivery side, on the technology services side, I would say that depending upon and I would say it applies to most of your standard industries, and I'll make exceptions for kind of two ends of the barbell or of the dumbbell. So kind of super high tech or high finance is more distributed, right? It is not 80-20, right? Everyone has to carry their own water, right? So take for instance Google, right? Or take for instance Blackstone, right? If you're not holding your weight at Blackstone, if you're not holding your weight at Google, if you're not holding your weight at Amazon, you'll be fired, right? You'll be reduced in workforce. You won't stick around. That being said, they also hire very carefully at those institutions and those organizations, right? So if it's high finance or high tech, Apple, Amazon, Blackstone, Goldman Sachs, these types of organizations, it is not 80-20. I would say it's probably the reverse. There's 20% of the people that are kind of slacking off or just coasting, and then the vast majority of the workforce contributes kind of equally. And then I would say on the other side, where the 80-20 rule probably does not apply beyond kind of high finance, high technology, is what I'd say is heavy manual labor or labor intensive types of industries, right? So if you're doing oil rig drilling or nuclear power plant engineering, you have to hire similarly a very specialized workforce. That workforce needs to pull their weight. Otherwise, the work will never get done, right? It'll never be done on time. It'll never be done according to spec, and it'll be clear if you have laggards there, right? And within such a labor-intensive market or industry, your peers will kind of route you out, right? So it's the 80-20 rule probably doesn't apply to kind of those other ends of the spectrum, but it does to I think healthcare and most general industries.
Got it. I think you've got a lot of different experiences that we could get into, but in in the essence of kind of overall of all of your experiences, what are some of the high points and low points and lessons learned along the way that you could share valuable nuggets of information with the audience?
Geez. I guess let's start with the low points. No one wants to talk about the low points. Everyone wants to talk about the high points. I believe in, as Johnny knows, and my colleagues at ScaleHealth and otherwise, my colleagues at Lynchpin Capital, and every place I've been at, I tried to operate with a mode of transparency, and just kind of blunt honesty. And one of the things that I think that we as society do not encourage enough is kind of the open sharing of failure, right? Or the open sharing of regret. And so no one likes to talk about hey, the time that I failed. They just want to talk about the successes. But look, everyone fails. No one no one walks on water as far as I know, and no one is perfect or bats 1,000, or scores a hat trick every football match, right? Every soccer game. And so in terms of failures, I would say that when I first started Lynchpin Technologies, I probably did three things wrong. In retrospect, one, I didn't raise as much money as I should have or could have. I purposefully kept it very lean because I wanted control. And so I did a friends and family round. I didn't, I put together a deck, but I literally raised a friends and family round of basically $750,000, in a month, just by, having calls or coffees or lunches with people, who knew my background and knew my schooling and just knew kind of, what I know in healthcare. In retrospect, I probably should have raised a little bit more to execute on the vision. And to kind of fully kind of deploy the right resources. So we were lean, we only had a team of about 5 folks, but in retrospect, I should have hired more people to kind of surround me and fill out the team. So that's why I think, that was a failure on my part to not raise enough capital, to not have planned appropriately the right resources that were necessary at the start to make, something like ad tech, digital media, basically, marketing technology, in healthcare work. Because as we know, healthcare is a very staid and conservative industry, and so I should have realized that it would have required more capital. So I think that was a failure on my part. I think the second failure that I had, also related to Lynchpin, was that I didn't rely on my advisory board and my board of directors enough as I should have. I had an ego, I guess. We all have egos, and I thought that I could figure it out, on my own. By that point, I had already obviously been through Towers Perrin. I had been through Harvard Pilgrim. I had been through a few startups while in grad school. One that was exited to CVS Caremark. I had been an entrepreneur in residence at Highland Capital. I had been a venture capitalist at Spark Capital, and I had spent time at Blackstone. So I was like, I got this figured out. I know what I need to do. So I think the other failure was not leaning on my board, an advisory board, enough, and just kind of trying to, for lack of better terms, kind of ram my head against the wall and try to bust my way through. Right? I think a mistake that a lot of people make, because we all have pride and because we all have ego, is to not reach out and ask for help, right? To say, hey, I'm stuck. Hey, I the sales cycle is taking longer than I thought it was. How am I not positioning this correctly, right? So I think that the second failure I had was not reaching out to my advisory board as often or as kind of intently as I should have, to help all, row in the same direction and get to the destination. I think thirdly was a failure. I don't know if it's a failure, but I guess I view it as a failure because I don't think I planned appropriately. Was it probably wasn't a great time to start a company, just in the sense that there was, some major like life things going on, for me and my family at the time. We had our first daughter, Sophia, in December of 2014. And then, my wife and I, Christine, were contemplating moving here to Los Angeles, where she is from originally, because she wanted to be closer to her family, and she comes from one of these kind of large families that she went to middle school, high school, piano lessons, violin lessons, swimming lessons with her cousins, and she wanted kind of that experience for Sophia to grow up in that same kind of similar environment. So, when you think about welcoming your first child, right, 7 or 8 months prior, you think about moving across the country to the West Coast, which I'm not familiar with since I grew up on the East Coast, and then starting a company, like leaving a very well-paying job at Blackstone to basically take on a lot of risk and start a company. I think that was probably a failure on my part in terms of managing all those different kind of professional and personal life responsibilities and challenges, and believing that I could make it all work. As most entrepreneurs know, starting a company is your everything, right? Or it should be. It's not something that you should just do on the side. It requires your constant, time and attention. And that's not to say you can never take a vacation or take an off day or anything like that, but dealing with your first child, moving across the country and trying to get acclimated to a completely new city, like Los Angeles, coming from Brooklyn, and then, coming from Boston before that, coming from Johns Hopkins in Baltimore and from Philadelphia, it's very different. And I think, in retrospect, that was a failure on my part from terms of foresight, to say, well, look, these two big life changes, personally, one personal, obviously, with Sophia, one, half personal and half professional, in terms of moving across the country to Los Angeles, that in addition to throwing a third, kind of, firecracker into, a closed environment, all within the span of, 6 to 9 months, it was probably a lot to deal with. And so, I think in retrospect, I would have tried to stagger things, I guess, a little bit better. Certainly the ones that you can stagger, right? Only God creates babies, as far as I know. So, in terms of the move across the country, in terms of starting the company, I think those could have been staggered a little better, just so I could get comfortable, right, in terms of the personal life with Sophia, since obviously our children, or my children, are the world to me, and we work, and I know it's the same for Johnny and most of my friends who share the same values, right? We work hard for our children, and so it's hard to say, hey, I'm going to work hard for my child, my firstborn, but I want to spend time with my firstborn and be there for everything, and be there for the feeding and the diaper changes and all that, and be present and be a good partner, be a good father, while also, starting another baby, which is a company. And so I think that was the other failure that I would say that I've had.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that'll resonate with a lot of people, and especially young entrepreneurs, where there is always a lot going on in the world, and the commitment to time and effort to put into nurturing that second baby, like you said, which is the new company, often gets understated, and people kind of, at least in my experience, underestimate the amount of time and effort and energy that goes into growing that. So I'm glad you brought that up as a good point. So, Charles, with that, I want to thank you so much for your time. What is the best way for people to get in contact with you and your companies?
Well, I think anyone who wants to get in touch with me can usually find me on, social media. I'm not heavily, I don't do it all the time, but, in this day and age, and particularly since, Spark was an early investor in a lot of social media companies like Twitter and Tumblr and what have you. So, you have to eat your own dog food. So, people can find me on Twitter at, my handle is just at CCH, which are my initials. You can find me on Instagram at 1CCH, so spelling out the number 1 and CCH. And then obviously on LinkedIn, so you can see my professional kind of credentials. But, I believe in transparency. So if you want to get in touch with me, or you want to do business with me, you want to invest with me, you want me to invest in your company, you want me to advise you, you should know who I am and kind of what I bring to the table. If you want to email me, I'm pretty transparent with my email. You can email me at charles@lynchpincapital.com, all one word, and Lynchpin, which is spelled with a Y. So it's the Queen's English as opposed to the Americanized version. Or you can also reach me at charles@ScaleHealth.com, because a lot of the work that we do at Lynchpin Capital ties in very closely with the work that we do as a broader team at ScaleHealth. And Johnny likes to use the term, which I like, and I believe in. Teamwork makes the dream work, and it takes a village, right? And so you can find me again through any of those means. And if you're interested, in particular, if you're in California, in Southern California, and you're looking to find a community of other folks that are working in healthcare and trying to make a difference in health, definitely check us out at scalehealth.com, because kind of tying back a point that I think I made earlier, it's lonely as an entrepreneur, and it's good to have other people who are also along a similar journey or similar path, right? That you can relate to, that you can open up to, and you can laugh with, eat with, but also kind of share stresses with, and I think we provide that very well at ScaleHealth in West LA, and then in Orange County, and hopefully soon in another location.
Fantastic. What we'll do to make life easier is we'll put the links down for Lynchpin Capital and for ScaleHealth below.
Right.
We'll also link to your LinkedIn page as well, just in case people do want to reach out to you. They can get to you very easily. So again, thank you so much for your time, Charles. It's been fantastic getting to know you and learning a little more about your story and your connection to your father and kind of how that's shaped your career. So thank you.
No, thank you very much for having me, and it was a pleasure. Look forward to doing this again sometime in the future.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers.